now introduce to you Kathy Bougher, a class of 2011 Lambda Fellow in Nonfiction.
I'll be reading the beginning of an essay entitled La Necesidad, Passing Through Tierra Blanca. Train whistles shrieked, drowning our voices as we spooned rice and beans onto the stacks of tortillas migrants offered with cupped hands. High decibel, metal on metal clanking scraped down my spine. The murmuring picked up, adding density to the thick tropical air as the clackety-clackety of the freight trains and engines escalated. That one's getting ready to go. It's about to leave. Gigantic machines shuttled around, coupling and uncoupling on the crisscross of tracks in the small-town rail yard on the edge of Tierra Blanca in the Mexican Gulf Coast state of Veracruz. Scores of men and women, migrants from Central America en route to their sueño americano, patiently waited to be served, but nudged forward as hunger competed with anxiety. Morena knew how to respond. She spooned faster and issued quick instructions. Open the bags. She slid the rice and beans into a plastic bag along with the half-dozen tortillas. Fill your water bottles, quick, hurry. She directed several men to pour from 5-gallon jugs. We stepped back a few feet from the track. I felt the force of the downdraft caused by the movement of the train. The suction could pull a person under the wheels, whose diameter almost matched my height. I kept spooning rice and beans, but my hands trembled, and I repositioned myself on the side of our little serving crew that was farthest from the tracks. The departing migrants, Central Americans, undocumented in both Mexico and the U.S., with few options for transport, knew which train to climb onto, and in another minute, one started click-clacking steadily along the tracks. The behemoth engine and fast-moving freight cars whooshed by, and briefly my eye caught the faces of the men and women who'd hauled themselves up onto the narrow ledges on the ends of the cars or up to the tops. Morena explained, this is their reality. As I served food and watched the train pick up speed, that reality was frightening to confront. But the ground shaking beneath train's thunder was real, and the people's faces, as they stared at us from the train, were real. Some waved. Was it from the success of having swung up onto the moving cars, or bravado to hide fear? Some faces hardened again after softening for a few moments while they ate. Many of the men and women to whom we just offered tortillas and beans would make it. They would reach the next town and the next train, eventually the U.S. border, and from there they'd get to South Carolina or New York or Michigan or Denver, but some would not. The trains would slice off their legs, or the gangs or the oven-baked Arizona desert would claim their lives. The clackety-clackety and the screeches exploded into one monstrous roar inside my head. These are the men and women who wash dishes in restaurants and clean offices in Denver, or who work construction in the Colorado mountains. Some are my students. They go through this thundering hell so they can mop floors to feed their families, if they don't die or become mutilated first. After the train faded down the tracks, I looked around, as if returning from a trance, almost startled that nothing had changed. Hundreds of migrants milled about. It was late afternoon and no one knew if another train would leave that night. Most people would sleep in the weeds or up against old railroad ties. The food Morena brought ran out just as the train left, but more travelers lined up, polite, hopeful, and hungry. So she went to a nearby shop to buy more tortillas. She said it was the first time ever that the food ran out before the line ended. Usually she kept her eyes on the pot and the serving spoon, afraid to see how long the line was. But somehow, every time until today, the last serving fed the last person in line.